KC Laboratory. Sponsored by Emprise Bank.
It's a live edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank. Emprise debit cards are contactless, like Dan Swanson in the box, secure and faster than ever. So fast, they're giving the cheetah a run for his money. Emprise Bank, member FDIC. So appreciative of them and all they've done for KC Sports Network. It's been wonderful partnering with them and cannot speak highly enough of Emprise. I also cannot speak highly enough of my dear pal sitting here with me. Not the guy I normally get to hang out with on this show. Find him on Twitter at Tucker D. Franklin. Tucker, hi.
Hi, Kent. How are you doing today? Usually when we do this show, I'm on the other side of the wall. I'm on the virtual wall, and I'm running the ones and twos behind the scenes. Listen, I'll still be running the ones and twos. If you have comments, make sure to throw them in there. I think this show is going to be more user engaged. I think we're going to have some more engagement with people who are watching live on this live edition of the KC Laboratory. Because, there's a lot of things to talk about that game. That game was very heated, and we could get into some stuff, Kent. We can, and let's do it.
We've got plenty to get into. There's going to be a lot of takes flying. We're going to try to get your guys' takes flying a little bit on this show. Craig is in Vegas. He is not placing bets on the Chiefs' odds to win the Super Bowl right now. He's got, some other work-related stuff. Maddie's flying back from Kansas City to Carolina right now. So that's why it's me and Tucker hanging out tonight. So they'll all be, Maddie will be back on the Thursday show. So, we'll have him back. Craig will be back next week, but we've got plenty to uncover. And it's good that you guys got to hear a little bit from them. They're kind of post-mortem on that game during the KCSN post-game show. So if you do want to hear a little bit more from them too, after you're done listening to this, maybe go check them out too. And we right off the bat, Andrew Richards 6, the Chiefs broke up the laboratory. You know what? It's a pretty fractured environment right now here. Obviously, extremely contentious, very tense, and I don't really know if we're gonna overcome it. I mean, Soli's blaming us right now on Twitter for the 2-3 start too right now, and man, it feels weird. It feels weird to see this 2-3 start from this team, and I think there's a lot to unpack. But I mean, Tucker, we really didn't get a lot of your thoughts yesterday. I think just overall, before we get too far down the rabbit hole here, just how do you feel coming out of that game?
I think the buzzword kind of from the press conferences, from everything that was said from players was embarrassing. And I think embarrassing is the right word. That's not what we're used to Chiefs football looking like. Mistakes, mental mistakes on special teams, on offense, on defense. That hasn't happened the past 3 years since Patrick Mahomes has been the quarterback. Maybe it's just the other side of the coin, the Lady Luck rearing back her ugly head, I guess you could say. One could say. But I think it's just one of those things. It's just so uncommon that Chiefs fans aren't used to it. And so it's one of those things where you don't know how to react. I know personally, I'm not very young. I mean, I'm not very old. I'm 23 years old. I have seen some pretty bad Chiefs teams, the 2-14 team, the Romeo Crennel era, the Todd Haley era. But most of my impressionable life has been during the Andy Reid era, which have been some pretty good football teams. Like it or not, Alex Smith was a pretty darn good football player. They were able to do some damage, maybe not in the playoffs, but in the regular season, they found some success. So it's kind of foreign to me myself when we start to look at these Chiefs teams and say, oh, they're 2-3. Like this is kind of uncharted territory, and superstitious fans will probably say it's our fault because we started a new network and everything like that, and you guys jumped ship. But that's not really what it's all about. We don't have any control over that. I'm not very superstitious because it's too much work to be superstitious.
Tucker, thank you so much for clarifying that it really isn't our fault. I really appreciate you making sure everybody knows that superstitions aren't real. I really genuinely, I'm glad that you clarified that. Tucker, I'm thinking, this feels different than anything we've had in the Patrick Mahomes era. This doesn't even I made the comment, hey, look, the Chiefs started 6-4 the year that they won the Super Bowl, and they there's a lot of circumstances around that, a lot of Patrick Mahomes' health. But even when he wasn't healthy, they lost some games that they shouldn't have lost, with the defense looking absolutely horrendous, mind you. But this feels different. This loss, this start to the season feels a lot different than what we're used to. And it's the first time I think we've really experienced this in the Mahomes era. The Chiefs defense was bad in 2018. They were really bad, but the Chiefs still won at a ridiculous rate. They started hot and they won a lot of football games, and this team isn't. So there are, fundamental mistakes and fundamental issues with this team that are compiling in a different way than when you saw when the Chiefs went on a historic run offensively in 2018, and it didn't really matter, that their defense wasn't particularly good. It's seeming to matter, and I don't think it's that the offense is just taking such a drastic step back, because if you look some of the statistics, it's really the turnovers. I mean, outside of the turnovers, the Chiefs are looking like one of the best offenses in the NFL, believe it or not, from a statistical perspective. I believe there's some stats before this game. They were 3.5 points per possession. That's absurd. That's absurd numbers. Right. Teams don't do that. But it's just, the margin for error with the defense has just been so slim. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. It feels different because even, Patrick Mahomes has overcome that defense before.
He has. Yeah, that's really interesting. And there's a comment I want to throw up here from Noah. He said, "We've seen the Chiefs start 1-5 and finished 11-5. Everyone needs to relax." That was Alex Smith. We have Patrick Mahomes. A part of me wonders if that's part of the problem. Not saying Patrick Mahomes is a part of the problem, but that thought process of, okay, Patrick Mahomes can fix everything. Is that putting too much pressure on Patrick Mahomes? I understand he's been there before. He's been to the Super Bowl. But that's something that I think of is like Chiefs fans just saying, all right, Patrick Mahomes, he can fix everything. Yeah, but like the defense needs some serious help.
The problem is, Tucker, that Patrick Mahomes has fixed everything to this point. Right. Like, that's the reality of it. Because, like, to this point in his career, like, we all do it, just assume, yeah, it's okay because we have Patrick Mahomes. And that doesn't change. And that sentiment shouldn't change in its entirety. But he can't cure everything. And he does he's playing a little bit right now like a guy that feels the burden of having, like, I think I saw someone say, it might have been Darren Orlovsky saying, Patrick Mahomes drops back every play looking like he's trying to score 21 points. And he really is. And he's wanting to try to make something happen down the field. And he's having to force himself to be patient. And with the game scripts that the way that they are and the struggles that this team is having, and as much effort as teams are trying to put forth to eliminate explosive plays, and him having to dink and dunk down the field, it is testing his patience with everything kind of compounding the way it is. And I think that's why I really liked what we saw from the Eagles game with him is, he just took everything as it was coming to him. He slowed down. He didn't try to do too much. He just went out there and just methodically embarrassed the Eagles. Well, when things aren't going your way, especially in a high-profile game, national television against Josh Allen, the number one contender for the AFC, and now the favorite to win the AFC, the Buffalo Bills, all these things, he kind of got outside of himself again, and, he's trying to do a lot right now. But to this point, he's bailed this team out in so many different ways. And that's what's so fascinating about where we're at with this team is, Mahomes does not cure all. He cannot cure all. He can cure a lot, and he has in a very short amount of time, to the point where we just believe him to be an inevitability, because to this point he has.
Yeah.
And now they're sitting 2-3, and they don't look like one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the AFC.
Yeah, I mean, they're last in their division. I mean, they're last in the AFC West, and they're looking up at teams like the Chargers, who they've already lost to, the Raiders, and the Broncos, who really haven't played anybody. We can talk about that when the time. But
yeah, we got time. I got takes.
But when you start looking at that's just some of the things that come to my head of like, okay, these problems have really been there. Right. These problems aren't, I don't think, new problems. Dan Sorensen missing tackles is not a new problem. Anthony Hitchens running away from players, I don't really think is a new problem. It's just that Patrick Mahomes has been able to mask it, that I think now that it feels new. But I don't, and I wanted to make this point earlier too, is that I don't think that there's a fix for this defense on this team. They're on the roster. There's no one that's going to make this defense seem better. People wanted to make it out that Willie Gay was going to be the savior, right? If you got on Twitter, people were saying Willie Gay is going to come back. This defense is going to be fine. Guess what? He came back. It wasn't fine. So I just think that there's has to be some. I know it's early to say this. It's week 5, right? But there's going to need to be some changes.
Well, week 5's not a small sample size.
Yeah.
Tucker, we're like a third of the way through the season. This is not some minuscule sample size. You pretty much are. There's a saying, like, you kind of are who you are after about, a 4 or 5 game sample size. There's not going to be some magic pill that this team takes that all of a sudden their defense is going to be noticeably better. I don't think you're going to be able to really turn this thing around, between week 6 and week 18 to a point where you're going to just feel confident going into these games. The Chiefs are going to have to figure out a different way to win some of these games. And I think you kind of saw that already. I think Andy's starting to get that vibe and get that feeling because you saw him being, in some situations, a little bit more aggressive on 4th down. He went for a 4th and 5 because I think he knew he couldn't flip the script too drastically. He couldn't. He really needed to get points on the board. He couldn't just give the ball back to them, which was also interesting and inexcusable. Why later in the game, in the second half, after the Chiefs, get into a 4th and manageable on the first drive after forcing a punt, they punt. They punt. They give the ball back, and then the defense forces another 3 and out, and the Chiefs throw a pick 6. Like, there's something about this team that I think just as I've been thinking about the last couple days, or not last day, last
hours,
20 hours,
right?
The timing for this team could not be worse. When I say that, I mean, the defense does something well, something good, and the offense can't capitalize. The offense is humming, and the turnovers that they are, giving away happen at, in the red zone. The ball's turned over in the red zone. Just this awful timing across the board, horrendous. I don't want to say it's bad luck. It's a little bit of bad luck. It absolutely is a little bit of bad luck. I will not, I think they are experiencing a little bit of bad luck. But also at the same time, the turnover level that they have is unacceptable. They're fumbling the ball in special teams. It doesn't even have to necessarily be turnovers. It's drops. There's some horrendous drops. Yeah. Tyreek Hill had a couple terrible drops, one leading to a pick 6. I mean, Tyreek Hill, here, how about we'll say this? Tyreek Hill cost the Chiefs 10 points yesterday because the Chiefs he dropped a 3rd and 12 on the first possession of the game, hit him in a bad spot right between the hands, and the Chiefs had to kick a field goal. That's 4 points because if he catches that ball, it's 1st and goal on like the 6. And then later in the game, crossing route through his hands, pick 6. That's 10 points right there. It just right there. Now the Chiefs lost by 18, but think about this: they get 7 in the first half instead of 3. They even if they punt on that drive where Tyreek Hill has the ball go through his hands, the game script's a lot different. The flow of that game is a lot different. I'm not saying they win, but maybe it's not 18 points. Maybe it's not as big of a blowout as we saw there. So, there's a lot of bad timing for these mistakes to be happening. And I think there's a little bit of luck involved, but I think it's just the leaders and the best players on this team have to step up and make plays.
Right. And we saw that, we've kind of seen that all year, that it's been the luck thing, and really to be good, we talk about it all the time, is you got to be good, but you also got to be kind of lucky, right? The Chiefs, when they won the Super Bowl, they didn't see Tom Brady in the Patriots way. They got the 1 seed thanks to Ryan Fitzpatrick. Luck kind of played into that, and it's okay to admit that luck is on your side, because that can happen. Royals, the World Series, luck was on their side too. Every run to the championship you have to have good skill, but you also have to have luck on your side as well. And maybe this is the flip of the coin. I think Patrick Mahomes kind of addressed that even after the game. He's like, yeah, we've had some pretty good luck in years past. Maybe now this is just kind of the flip side of it, and it'll eventually even out because that's kind of just how things go. And Ken, I think you're extremely right on the timing. The timing has been incredibly weird. On routes too. On routes, it's been off. You always seems like when McCole Hardman runs a route, he's either talking to Patrick Mahomes about what he should have done, or that probably is a whole different issue about McCole Hardman.
Do you know
But
who's
Patrick
right on
Mahomes is
those
telling
plays?
him
Do you know who's right on those plays? I will almost guarantee 100% of the time it's Patrick Mahomes. And you want to know
but it's not.
why? No, time out real quick. You shouldn't have
Yeah,
said
yeah.
you shouldn't open that Pandora's box. The lack of trust from
Fair enough.
McCole is because he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. And when he does get opportunities, sometimes he drops plays. So those are some things there, just little things. There's lack of trust there. And boy,
Mhm.
it would be really nice if Mahomes trusted him, but he doesn't. Sorry, continue.
No, and it's not just McCole Hardman either. You kind of see, like a little bit off with, there's a, I think the throw to Travis Kelce that was on the third down that led to the interception against, who did they play at home? I guess in week 3 it would have been maybe, I can't remember, but it was a
Chargers?
deep ball third down. Yes, it was Chargers. He threw the ball deeper than Kelsey was going. It was a miscommunication with there. There's been some drops and some miscommunications with Tyreek Hill, as you've already mentioned. So it's not just because McCole Hardman has not developed that trust. It's with guys that he
There's a
has
lot.
developed with. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot to kind of process here, and that's not even talking about, which I think is a really good point about when the defense does something good. The offense was usually able to capitalize off of it, right? We were used to it as fans saying, okay, Tyrann Matthew gets an interception. That's usually 7 points coming the other way for the Chiefs. That's not been the case this year. The defense rarely forces turnovers now, I should say. And then once it happens,
just a punt, Tucker. Give me a
yes,
give me a punt.
just a turnover on downs essentially, and they can't capitalize on it, which is incredibly frustrating. And the offense, listen, that game last night was not just about the defense. The defense can
No.
be the punching bag all they want, but the offense played a fair role in that game of dropping it. They did not score when they needed to, kind of took themselves out of it. The play calling was, I don't think, the best of Andy Reid's career. They wasted a timeout, I think, early in the first half and second half. It was weird. It was a real vintage Andy Reid time management type of performance. The play calling, they try to get too cute in the red zone. I don't like it when they do that, when they try to cause all that fake confusion. The Bills didn't fall for it at all. They just all stood there and were like, okay, just snap the ball. That's essentially what happened. And man, it's just so frustrating to see them. I know they're trying to get a spark, something, but the defense looked lost. I mean, we could talk about Dan Sorensen probably for a whole podcast about
I
why
saw,
he's
hey,
still on the field.
Tucker, I saw
Yeah.
a comment about Dan Sorensen from Drew B. We'll get that one up. Let's get a few of
Yeah,
these comments
yeah.
up. I want to run through
Let's
a few
throw
of
'em
these
up.
comments because we want to give you guys a chance today to air some grievances, get some takes off. We want to kind of give you guys a chance today. So if you're wherever you're watching, you just throw some comments up and we'll try to get some of those up today on this show because we want to turn it
That's a
over
good
to
one.
you a little bit. Angry drunken German. Mahomes can't fix Sorensen. That's exactly right. He can't. And I
Very
mean,
true.
there's only so much he can do. I saw Drew B say Tyreek cost at least 7 points and Dirty Dan cost us 14. There it is.
Mhm.
You think about, I mean, here's the thing. We just talk about, like 7-10 points from Tyreek Hill cost them. Yeah. And then Dan Sorensen, a couple. I have no clue what Dan Sorensen's purpose is right now. And I think I think Tyrann Mathieu, just if you read between the tea leaves, this isn't an insider thing. If you read between the tea leaves, I think Tyrann Mathieu's been a big advocate of Dan Sorensen all the way back to the Super Bowl year. Tyrann Mathieu is cutting, taking a picture of Dan Sorensen in an empty film room in the dark, breaking down tape, trying to get extra tape work in a couple days before the Super Bowl. And so I think Tyrann Mathieu has been a big advocate for Dan. But then what's today? What's the photo of today? It's Tyrann Mathieu, hands extended, looking at Dan Sorensen, gave 2 massive plays up, and both of them were his fault. And I think Andy even alluded to that. It's just the decision making from a roster construction. Oh, how about this? Another week, another Dave Tobe Pet getting another penalty. This is every single week. The guys at the bottom of this roster that everybody was like, really? He made the roster? The special teams only players that can't find the field on defense. Chris Lamons, Dorian O'Daniel. What are they doing? They're out there making penalties. Some of the decision making on this roster, it's why is Dan Sorensen play? Why are we rostering all these guys, these key special teamers with the penalties? Like these little mistakes, these little decisions keep compounding. I think there's a lot of little decisions compounding with this organization right now. We can talk about the draft too if we want, because the lack of blue chip player in the Brett Veach era, it's pretty damning. It really is. Look at his track record now. The sample size is big enough with these draft prospects, and there's fatal flaws to some of their high value picks. Derek Nottie is Derek Nottie is one of the better players in Brett Veach's draft history. And Derek Nottie is a 2-down player. And that's it. And he's not even having his best year either. There's no pass rush ability. There's no ability to affect the passer. What's his strength? Defending the run. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. How many 30-yard runs is this guy going to break in the National Football League? He tries to get the edge. He can get outrun by defensive ends. There's a limitation to his athletic profile. He's not able to separate as a pass catcher, which is, frankly, I'm surprised. I was a big Clyde Edwards-Helaire fan. I thought he was a perfect fit for this Chief offense as a running back. But the athletic profile is limiting his ability. We talk enough about Nick Bolton, but you already know it's the same thing. His abilities in the space that matters the most in the game of football are, he's a 2-down player that can't cover. The Chiefs got some 2-down players that can't cover. And they've spent a lot of early draft capital on him. It's infuriating.
It is. And I'm not going to say anything about Nick Bolton until I'm wrong. And I haven't been wrong yet. So I'm not going to say anything else because, we already know where I stand on Nick Bolton. This is another good comment here from Noah. Why do you think the Chiefs couldn't beat cover 2 yesterday? It's not a new theme for teams to play us that way. It's not a new theme because they put those 2 high safeties up there just to kind of dare Mahomes not to throw deep, essentially. And I think it kind of gets into that, okay, now playing from behind, Mahomes has to feel like he has to throw deep. And I think it's one of those things where he doesn't really want to take, like you mentioned, Kent, he was taking what defense was giving him against the Eagles. He didn't really do that yesterday, I don't think, against the Bills. And I think that's kind of what it was. And they've got some dudes on that defense. Let's not act like the Bills defense is scrubs or anything like that. Like, that Bills defense is pretty good. Gregory Rousseau made one hell of a play for that interception, that tip out there. I liked Rousseau out of the draft. He also had, what was it, Tre'Davious White? Did he get that interception that fall into his lap? I can't remember who it was. It was one of the corners. But, man, they've got good guys out there.
One thing that you guys should pay attention to on the KCSN Substack coming in on tomorrow is, we talk specifically about 2-man coverage. I wrote an article today about 2-man coverage. That's what the Bills were defaulting to on 3rd down this week. And there was some success and failure against it, but it was a good little mixture for, to kind of throw some things. It looked like they were playing a lot of zone early downs. But then when it was getting to 3rd down, specifically the 3rd and longs, and the Chiefs were getting to a lot of 3rd and longs, they're getting some 3rd and long situations, especially early in the game, looking at the opening script. And, Mahomes' legs were able to beat it from time to time. But, the Chiefs also weren't able to make them pay for 2-man either. I think 2-man makes a lot of sense, especially, basically, hey, Mahomes uses his legs. Okay, so you're going to force Mahomes to be running all over the field, chance for injury, getting some closure on the sidelines, maybe getting some shots in there out on the edge. It's a nice idea. It's a good idea for these defenses. And I think you saw that bear out a little bit. I think, the Chiefs were having some success against it. I'm not going to act like they didn't. And some of it was self-inflicted, but it closed the margin for error on a few plays for sure. So, the Chiefs haven't really been able to consistently make teams pay. And the Bills did a great job of mixing things up, and that's kind of what they were defaulting to on 3rd down a little bit. And man, it was ugly. It was really ugly. All right, Tucker, I want to get some more comments. Let's try to get some more people involved here. Oh, Michael Becker also, Reed hasn't been good enough to justify moving Jones to the ends. You're right. On multiple counts. we've talked a little bit about this. I really believe that the Chiefs are trying to do what they can. Reed's been bad. Like, I think there's no
Yeah.
other way around that. But also, I think just the Chris Jones conversation needs to be had too. Is they've done a lot to try to build some, they're trying to find a way to make Chris Jones fit the absolute best he can. Chris Jones has limitations in the run game. And some of it's self-inflicted because some of it just is flat out effort. He just kind of stands up and occupies space sometimes. He really doesn't try to get off blocks all that much against the run game. Sometimes he's just going out of his own gap to make splash plays. And the problem is, and you kind of notice this with Spagnuolo to a fault, I think, because of guys like Dan Sorensen wanting to be assignment sound, is that if you don't have a lot of cohesion and gap responsibility, being assignment sound in the run game, it can lead to a lot of fatal errors. And so the Chiefs are trying to eliminate some of those fatal errors that Chris Jones presents in the run game. But now he's not really getting a ton of splash plays either. And I don't know if that's the position switch. I honestly, here's the thing. I know everybody's complaining about why he hasn't even been able to kick inside. I think they're trying to kick him inside when they can, but the situation hasn't presented himself all that much. Right. Because the defense has been so bad on early downs. And so there's a lot of complications there. And he's not healthy either. Chris Jones has got a wrist injury. I mean, he missed this game. We forget that. He missed this game. I don't think he closes the gap by 18 points. But boy, if he makes a couple splash plays, Tyreek Hill has a good performance or an average performance where he doesn't drop 2 passes in key situations. I mean, you're talking about, there's some things there that could have gone the Chiefs' way a little bit differently. But yeah, there's a lot of layers to that whole Chris Jones conversation, I think. And we're going to have to continue to explore that, I think, through the rest of the year, continue to observe and kind of navigate that because, I mean, I think they're having an identity crisis with Chris a little bit, which is why they moved him. They don't move Chris Jones if everything's going right. How about that? And so I think that tells you. Yeah. I think that tells you everything you need to know about the Chris Jones situation the last couple of years. Maybe there's been some things there that don't all, we've justified the splash plays, but those don't matter in the grand scheme of things. I mean, they matter, but in the grand scheme of things, you have to look at it from a 50,000-foot view.
I think so too. And one of the points that kind of Maddie and I during that extended halftime looked up and kind of crunched the numbers on is I had a buddy of mine text me. He said, "Hey, how much of the payroll is defensive players? How much is it?" And I said, "It's got to be a decent amount." So we went and looked. 55% of the Chiefs' total cap is spent on the defense, with 26 of that going to the defensive line. You've got a lot of money invested in the defensive line that's not getting any pressure at all. And that doesn't just fall on Chris Jones. That doesn't just fall on Frank Clark. That's also Jarran Reed too. Jarran Reed has not played good. I know that's kind of, I feel like it's not being talked about a whole lot, but I feel like we have talked about it, right? Does that seem weird? I feel like there's been just bigger issues than Jarran Reed.
There's just so many big issues. There's just so many big issues.
Yeah, there is. And I think that's kind of a little frustrating with what the defense is there's a lot of return on investment. I've talked about return on investment, I think, every time I've been talking with you guys, and we want to see that return on investment. And this is a good one. Just speaking about the defensive line for Matthew S. here. Do you try and trade Chris Jones after this season? What do you think? I've got to see something first, yes.
I think I've been saying this last couple weeks, and I think I think the Chiefs need to blow this thing up in its entirety, and that includes Chris Jones, because Chris Jones is a way you can save a lot of cash. You can get an asset for him because he is an exceptional pass rusher. But I just think, this defense has an identity crisis. I think they've tried to figure out ways to build a defense around Chris, to what Maddie's been talking about the last couple weeks. Trying to build a defense around Chris, I think, has proven to be a little bit difficult, because they're trying to make him make the most sense in Kansas City, which is why they're moving him up and down the defensive line. And I honestly think you have to have the Tyrann Mathieu question too. I'm not sure you don't blow this thing up. You cut Clark. You cut Hitchens. I'm not sure you extend Tyrann Mathieu. I'm not sure you don't try to get an asset for Chris Jones, because I think there's probably some defensive schemes that can help play to his strengths a little bit better, be a little bit more forgiving with some of his, issues in stuff like that. So I'm not sure you don't do that. And I know that's pretty drastic, but and I think honestly, I think Chris is the last guy you hang on to, or I think the last, the one if you're gonna hang on to one, it's undoubtedly Chris. But I'm not sure you don't look and just try to blow this thing up, get some addition, get a bunch of cap space, get some draft picks, and try to completely overhaul this thing. Von Miller might be a guy you go take a look at and throw into the mix. He's having an outstanding season. Get a couple other guys to build around, and I think you can't really build around Vaughn, but you've got to. I think you need to have a long, hard look at that entire defensive structure because it's horrendous. I mean, it's historically bad. It's historically bad. Ooh, Nate Dogg, would you elevate Sam Madison or look elsewhere? Oh, man, that's tough. If you ask Craig and Matt, and you kind of look at some of the stuff that they've been talking about the last couple of weeks, just to harken back to some of the stuff that we've been having the conversation about, I don't think this is entirely a Spags problem. I think there are some Spags issues. Spags is trying a lot of different things right now.
Yes.
And it's not that he is without blame, because I think some of the personnel decisions that are being made probably have some Spags flavor. But guess what? Hey, there's a lot of turmoil in the defensive backfield right now, too. There's a lot of turmoil in the defensive backfield right now. And I like Sam Madison. I think he's done a lot, getting a lot out of those corners. But there's a lot of there's a lot of issues in the back end there, too. So I don't really know if this requires a drastic shakeup of the defensive staff right now. I think it's a talent problem. I think the drafts are catching up to them. I think the reasons that there's been concern, from some corners of the, look, we're the draft nerds, right? We are, we kind of nerd out, and there's a lot of wonderful people here in Kansas City that draft that kind of nerd out as well about the draft. There's a lot of awesome people doing a lot of work on the draft, and it's fun to see how passionate Chiefs fans and Chiefs analysts are about the draft. It's really fun to have a lot of those people. I think it's there's so much optimism about every draft pick that your team has, right?
Mm-hmm.
Man, there's a lot of reasons these guys will succeed and fail. And I think, you got to look at the reasons a guy will succeed and the reason a guy will fail. And I think there's a lot of players that have limiting factors in their game. And I think you're starting to see that there's not a blue chip because there's not a guy capable of being a blue chip. There's not very many of those guys. I think Juan Thornhill was a guy that could have been, but there's very obviously some issues there. I mean, the Chiefs are almost done with his contract. He's more than half of the way through his rookie contract.
Yeah.
L'Jarius Sneed, ups and downs his sophomore year. I still think there's a lot of ability there. He could be a guy that could become a blue chip, but I think the best chance of the blue chip right now is Trey Smith. But you're paying for the sins of some really bad, really poor, really limited drafting the last 3 years that have, there's no ceiling to a lot of the players this team has taken. And the guys with the ceilings haven't been able to live up to it largely.
Yeah, and I think that's what's kind of so frustrating about it. There's been a lot of comments about, I could throw a ton of comments up here about fire Veach. When's Veach going to be good? When's Veach going to get the heat? I think it's starting to happen now, right? I think people are starting to say, okay, hang on, Brett Veach. What have you actually done? I think people are starting to look at Brett Veach's resume, and some people are, jumping the gun. I'm not fire Veach yet. Okay, let's maybe take a look and assess where he's at after this year. There's a lot of things saying on our comment section here, just in the chat, saying Spags needs to go. You touched on the defensive shakeup. I don't think that's really what's going to happen. I don't think Veach is going to be fired. I don't think it's going to be a personnel, a coaching staff, I should say, mix up. I think the first mix up that's going to happen is Jimmy's and Joe's. You can have all the X's and O's you want. I've started to learn this kind of as a coach myself. You can scheme up the best thing in the world to go against what they have. If you don't have the Jimmy's and Joe's to execute it, it doesn't mean a darn thing. So I think that's kind of where it's at right now, and that's where I start looking at this Chiefs roster, the depth. You're thinking, man, do they have any of these Jimmys and Joes that can come out here and execute that? And I think this Angry Drunken German has brought this up a lot. We have talent. The questioning isn't why are they performing. I mean, I'll
challenge that a little bit, though. I'll actually challenge that a little bit. Sorry.
Yeah.
In all due respect, Angry Drunken German. I don't think they have talent on defense. I don't think they have that much talent on defense right now. I think their linebacker level is abysmal. There's such a complete lack of functional athleticism that it is making it impossible for this team to have any success at the second level of their defense. Anthony Hitchens, beyond being a poor athlete, looks lost, which should not be happening in year 3, especially a guy that's,
right.
So so critical to getting them lined up, and that's straight from Spags. We've talked about Nick Bolton. That's the role Nick Bolton is in is not the role he should be playing.
Mm-hmm.
No, just inarguably, he does not have the functional athleticism. Jaron Reed does not look like the same guy that had a lot of success in Seattle. Derek Nottie, limited player. There's no pass rush use. Frank Clark, injuries and all kinds of stuff there have really, he hasn't been able to step up and make the kind of plays that he did early, during that Super Bowl run, and he's not the same. I mean, he's still a good run defender. He's their best run defender, I will argue, but there's only so much that matters. And he's not the same guy as a run defender he was even 2 years ago. There's a lot to unpack with that situation. And then, Juan Thornhill cannot be trusted by this defensive staff. There are issues there that are keeping him from playing at getting enough snaps.
Yeah.
The Chiefs aren't blind. They know Dan Sorensen stinks. What does that tell you? Read between the lines. Read the tea leaves. And this team, and going back, Brett Veach has gone out of his way to not spend money at corner. He's actively avoided spending money at cornerback in his entire tenure. He's never spent more than $5 million on a corner. He spent like $4 or $5 million on Bashaud Breeland a few years ago coming out of free agency. I think it was after the Super Bowl. And that's the most expensive cornerback that they've had. Like, there is a talent problem. I really believe that. And there should not be a talent problem when you are the second most expensive defense in the NFL. That's bad drafting, bad free agency, drafting limited players without a ceiling. I mean, he tried it. Here's what I think. I think Brett Veach tried to hit a bunch of singles, hopefully a couple stretching the doubles in the draft, and he struck out on a lot of different players. And that's really tough. And it's a complicated history with Brett Veach, because there are some things I like. And there's some things with his process I like, but then there's just some things that just make me want to scratch my head.
Yeah. Ken, I've been thinking about this, kind of mulling it over, and I've had conversations with many people, BJ Kissel included, about the Chiefs. Seems like they wanted to stay the same, right? They won the Super Bowl. They brought back all of these starters. They wanted to stay the same. But in the NFL, if you stay the same and aren't improving, is that the problem? Is that the problem, that the Chiefs are trying to stay the same instead of trying? I'm not saying they're not trying to improve, but trying to keep the same core together instead of bring new blood in there. And in this Spagnuolo little, I don't want to call it a cult, but that was the first kind of word that came to my head. He wants guys that are in a system, who know the system. That has almost hurt the Chiefs defense to this point, I think.
The only thing the Chiefs defense has done the last 2 years since winning the Super Bowl is get older. Haven't made any key additions that have changed the outlook of this team. Draft picks haven't. Yeah, it's brutal. There's a lack of talent, and the guys that were key pieces of that Super Bowl run are 2 years older than they were now. They're hurt. They're unathletic. They've lost athleticism. They've lost a step. They're still getting trusted, and that's a problem.
Right.
You know what's not a problem, Tucker?
But a McAdoo's in Kansas City would not be a problem. But it's a problem now that it's not in Kansas City. Listen, everybody, you need a McAdoo's wherever you are. And guess what? There's great news. If you live at the Lake of the Ozarks, you have one now at KK Crossing. Look at that glorious face. Just looks like Craig Stout. So just remember that every time you go into a McAdoo's. Wow, that looks like Craig Stout. But they have phenomenal customer service. They've got the best selection of wine, liquor, beer, spirits, anything you want. You can find our partners, 360 Vodka. Anything you want from the Holiday Distillery, you can find that at McAdoodles. You will absolutely love a McAdoodles. So make sure you get one to Kansas City. I've loved my experiences there. Craig has never steered me wrong in life, and never with liquor either. He loves McAdoodles. He would not steer you wrong in this either. If we didn't like McAdoodles, we wouldn't be talking about him. So if you are interested in bringing a franchise near you, email Roger at info@macadoodles.com for more information. How's that, Kent?
That was wonderful. You did a phenomenal job, Tuck. Let's get a few more comments in here from some people before we get out of here.
I like this one.
Ooh. Andrew Richards, we have worse linebackers now than 2018. It's tricky because I think the linebackers have just consistently been terrible for the last 4 years. But everything else around them has just been so bad that it makes them look even worse. So they're bad though. Don't get me wrong. They're all terrible. Chris Kiltz. They were fooled by an average team with 3 stars on offense. Yeah. I think that's fair too.
I think that's very fair. Here's another one about linebackers.
Willie can at least add some athleticism to the linebackers. You're right. And I think there's some hope that happens, but man, you got something, Tuck?
Yeah, I've seen, I can't remember where the comment came. It's been buried by now. One of them is saying, I think Craig has also said this in the Discord, of just put the athletes out there. Just if you're going to fail with your athletes out on the field. I think that's kind of the mindset that we all want to think, I guess, so that we want to have happen, that's what you want to happen. Your young guys, if you're going to fail with your young guys, build experience, everything like that. But as you mentioned earlier, kind of with Juan Thornhill, what is that? Like, if you're not getting the young guys out on the field, that's a problem. You're not getting those guys reps, anything like that. So I think that's going to be something interesting to see develop here.
All right, well, that is going to do it for the KC Laboratory. I have a special visitor here crashing the party. Say hi, Kim.
Hi.
Say go Chiefs.
Go Chiefs.
And despite all these issues, we're still rooting for our favorite football team in the world. Thank you so much to Emprise Bank for all they've done. And thank you to my friend Tucker Franklin for filling here on this episode of the KC Laboratory. Thanks, buddy.
We'll see you guys.
All right, we'll catch you later.